Welcome to the Fortunate Events Podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Bennett, and this podcast explores how our education, careers, and life experiences intersect in unexpected ways. My journey has been filled with a number of really fortunate events, many of which seemed like challenges at the time, but they ultimately led to growth and opportunities. Today, I am so excited to share the airspace with my very best friend in the whole world, Jennifer Guarino.
Hey.
Jennifer is my twin sister and best friend, as I mentioned. Jennifer works at Oxy as, actually, why don't you tell us a little bit about your job and why don't you give an introduction of yourself real quick?
I would be glad to. Thank you. So hello, everyone. I'm Jennifer Guarino. I do work at Oxy, Occidental Petroleum. I've been there for about 6 years. And I work as the DIB and Special Projects Training Manager at Oxy. So in the DIB group, DIB is Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging, and I oversee all of the training and then work on various projects throughout the year.
Love that. Jennifer was a guest on my previous podcast that I did for school as part of my my podcast class. And as y'all know, this new podcast series is part of my graduate program. It's for my capstone project. So I wanted to have Jennifer back on because of our personal connection, obviously, being the person that I'm closest to in the world. And just wanted to have a kind of a casual conversation, but about some really important topics and that really tie well into this podcast, the podcast theme, which is fortunate events. So as most of y'all know, I was a teen mom. I got pregnant at 18 a few months after I graduated from high school, which of course was a big shock. I will never say that my pregnancy was a mistake because I don't look at it that way. I look at it as something that was unplanned, but the greatest blessing that I've ever been given. But at 18, when you find out that you're pregnant, it is a hard thing to deal with and grasp and figure out what you're going to do about it. So for me, my other friend at the time also actually had gotten pregnant. And she decided not to keep her baby, which I supported because I do support life, but I also support the choice. And I know that, abortion is a very hard thing and it's a very personal decision and it's not something that I would judge someone for. But when I found out I was pregnant, I did have pressure put on me to have an abortion. And so that was hard, especially with my other friend just going through that process. And, she was like, well, when are you scheduling yours? Like it was almost kind of a simple, nonchalant thing, but of course it was a big deal. So I think from the very beginning, I was set on keeping my son and, keeping my baby and raising him. But I did have, thoughts and I guess choices to at least weigh or consider. I also had to consider, or I really gave it no thought, but adoption was another, of course, choice that you could make whenever you find out that you're pregnant and you're not expecting it. So let's just talk a little bit about that experience, if you're okay with it, Jen, and kind of like what you were thinking and what was going through your mind when you found out such a big earth-shattering news, at 18 when your twin found out she was pregnant. Let's talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, I will say that experience was life-changing for me too, and I'll tell that story. Yes, I actually had a dream that you were pregnant the day before you told me.
Okay, I don't know if I remember this.
Yeah, I remember dreaming about it. I don't know if you had mentioned maybe you thought you were, but I remember vividly dreaming that you were pregnant, and then the next day you coming to tell me that you were pregnant.
Wow.
And also the next day after that, I was on a bus to Young Life Camp with no phone and no contact with the family for a whole week. And so out of fear, honestly, that's what it was. Out of fear, I was one of those people who said, you should consider getting an abortion. And I hate that that's part of my story with you because I am so grateful for Branson and could not imagine life without him. But I did say that to you because, again, I was scared. And then as I was away from you that week, I remember being really scared again because I knew that wasn't the right choice. And I knew that you needed to have your baby and that God allowed that for a reason. And I couldn't talk to you. So that was incredibly scary. But fast forward, I want to get to the point here. During that week at Young Life Camp, I let my other campers know what was going on. I really wrestled with it. And the day before the last day of camp, you have this quiet time where you go and you pray to God and have like 20 minutes of just quiet time. And during that prayer time, I said, okay, God, this is terrifying. I don't know what you're going to do with Jess and with her life and what it looks like now, but I surrender this to you. I just need to know it's going to be okay. I have to know that if we're trusting you in this, that it has to be okay. And I don't know if you remember this, but immediately after saying that prayer, we went in and all of the campers gathered around and listened to a concert that night that Young Life brought in. A singer all throughout the week put on a concert at the end. His name is Ryan Long, and he wrote a song called If It Hadn't Rained. And he wrote this song about a lady, a woman, who I think was a teenager who got pregnant unexpectedly, almost had an abortion, but didn't. And what a blessing that boy's life was to everyone around him. And the reason he wasn't aborted was because it had rained and it just messed up the plans of the mom. And how in the world would that song come in contact with me at the exact time that my sister was pregnant and thinking about abortion or me putting that pressure on? So that felt like a miraculous God encounter with me and changed my life and changed my walk and my relationship with him.
I love that story so much because obviously it's emotional and personal. But I wrote that in my notes for me to touch on that if you hadn't brought it up about if it hadn't rained. I think he actually wrote the song in first person if it was his mom that was going through that, and he was the boy that ended up living. And so, imagine your life and finding out that, at one point you might not be here, based on that split second decision or like that last minute change of mind. It just, the song sticks with me. I love it. I'm probably actually going to name this episode.
Yeah.
So
have that music in the background.
I know it really is so moving because it shows prayer works, obviously. And, in your lowest moment, if you reach out and, seek him, I think that you will find he'll speak to you in certain ways, through music or through people. So it's just such a beautiful thing, and obviously hold no grudges with you, Jen.
Well, good.
I know with certain people who had, encouraged me to to give my son up for adoption too. I think that there's some underlying feelings that are kind of still there. Not for me, like I'm not bitter or upset about this at all anymore, but I just think, thinking back on that time, it was so hard for everyone. No one really knew what to do. It was the first time that our family
I've dealt
with
trauma.
anything scandalous at all, because my family, they're all very religious and very conservative
and very by the book, like very obedient, I'd say. And, we grew up in a house, there was no drinking, no cursing, no bad things, which I'm grateful for. I think we were sheltered, but there were some blessings in that. And then also rebellion, as we saw later.
Yes, it's true. Like I really was so naive, and just thought it wouldn't happen to me. And then here I am. But I'm so grateful that we, have this beautiful relationship with Branson, and that you are such a wonderful aunt to him. And God knew what he was doing when he gave him to us.
He's been a blessing to all of us. And again, if he hadn't been born, then my faith walk might look different, and I might have been carrying down a rebellious road longer. And so I'm grateful for him, and I'm sorry that it was so painful and hard, but I think God has delivered beauty from the ashes that felt like were ashes at that point.
Absolutely.
I mean, I never remember having any like judgmental feelings about what you were doing or how you were raising him, because I wouldn't know what to do either,
Yeah.
I I don't know that I have a lot of like things that stand out when it came to your parenting. I just know I had a lot of respect for you. Knew you were going through a lot of hard things. I think that time in any person's life between 18 and 24, 25, I mean, you're just becoming an adult. You don't know what you're doing. Your brain is not fully developed.
Right.
So anybody during that time is going through challenges and finding out who they are and their identity. And you're trying to do that while also taking on this other new identity of parenting and momhood. So that, just hats off to you. As a 38-year-old woman who's a mom, I have no idea what I'm doing either. So yeah, I have a lot of compassion for you because that was really hard. And I do think just how you were doing that, you were trying to work really hard at keeping your relationship healthy, which we know didn't end that way, but that's okay. That wasn't meant for you. You are meant to be separated.
Marry a rich man.
That's on episode 43. Meet her husband. I'm just kidding. But yeah, you were trying to work hard on your relationship and be a good mom and go to school. You were just juggling so much. I felt like my life was, not in shambles, but just I was really stressed out and didn't know who I was. So I can't imagine having all those other roles too.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm still figuring that out, like who I am too, because as you know, Branson has been my identity or a huge part of it for 19 years now or 20 years now with being pregnant too. So, yeah, I just appreciate you sticking by me. I remember that I love how sweet and supportive you were. You would give me books to read and I just half the time I wouldn't read them.
I gave you books?
You gave me lots of books on parenting, not so young, but throughout the years. And especially like the last probably 7 years, you gave me a book or two about helping raise teens because I still felt like a teenager myself.
I remember that somewhat, but that's funny because I'm a book collector. Like I
know.
Love books. I just love to collect knowledge on the subject of parenting.
Yes, and I should have done more and actually read the books. I think I still have a couple. I'll have to read and report back on that.
Let's approach this from an analytical,
now that we're past
standpoint.
it. Now
Don't go at it with feelings.
Because I can compare how did I handle this versus what did it say to do in the book, A learning lesson.
Yes, there you go.
Well, with I'm probably being a young mom, but also just the stressors of the relationship I was in, it definitely had a toll throughout the years. But when I left that relationship, it really came out more like how I would deal with things and cope with things. And, just my emotional intelligence was kind of shattered. I feel like
a little low.
It was low. And, but coming through it, I'm still facing challenges every day. This past month has been one of the hardest I've been through in a long time. But I do think that, going through raising a child as a young mom and then, following that was the divorce and going through that, I do think that, going through things like that does make you stronger and resilient because you kind of have no choice. So you're either going to come out on the other side of it and grow from it, or it's, can put you on the street probably.
Get better. There's a
Literally.
song about that.
So, but part of that, going through those challenges does weigh on your mental health. And for me specifically, I faced some challenges with mental health that I had never had before these life-changing events. And surprisingly, I didn't lose my mind from having a baby at 18. I really struggled following my divorce, which is interesting to me because I just didn't know I was like going through a breakdown over the past 19 years, or I just didn't have the time to
it all up.
or I just didn't have the time to go through it because I was raising a child, But after my divorce, I really truly had some pretty bad bouts of mental health. I was going through some depression and then, a lot of anxiety, which I did have anxiety well before that marriage, but it was never really addressed. And, after being diagnosed with anxiety, I realized I had had it my whole life and just never, know what to do about it. I thought I was just a worrier in that my stomach would just hurt sometimes, but I didn't know that all those things were related until I became an adult, which is kind of sad. But I also think that growing up, there wasn't a lot of talk about anxiety and mental health either. I think mental health has been more of a common topic. I might leave this in, but I have a cat, Bandit, and we rescued him on the freeway
Bandit, be nice to me.
almost a year ago. But he definitely has the wild, feral blood in him still, and so he likes to play kind of wildly and scratch and bite. And he's just playing, but it's not good when you're doing a podcast. So
He's just looking at me ready to pound.
yeah, he is ready. He will get you. So you got to be on guard.
And no little fingers dangling. He's come
Or
after him
toes.
twice.
No toes either. He got mom the other day.
Okay, he moved. We're good. Sorry about that.
For now.
Distraction. Okay.
But with the mental health and going through that divorce, you know, I was able to come out on the other side of it, but I was in the lowest point of my life a few years ago. I really didn't want to get up in the morning sometimes. I know, I want to cry. But, you know, I got through it with faith and with family. I would not have been able to overcome that without either one of those things. And I think it helps to talk about it because mental health has such a stigma around it. Mental health is just about how you take care of you and yourself when you're, you know, and how you handle your emotions. And if you are going through some mental challenges, those need to be addressed. And so, you know, mental health kind of is like this blanket statement, but it really applies to everyone. And if you're ever in a low point or, you know, feeling off, or you are feeling it in your body with the stress and the, you know, anxiety, that's when it really becomes a problem and you need to address it. I don't know if you want to talk about anything on mental health or have any thoughts there, but if you want to move on to another topic, we can.
No, that's okay. I'm happy to share a little bit. So I got to be what's the word that you say?
The guinea pig?
The guinea pig of mental health crises
in our family.
God just ordained me with that. I was so blessed. No, I'm just teasing.
I'm so blessed.
Yeah, I had my own severe bout of mental non-wellness back in 2018, and I had experienced some, you know, like every normal, ordinary human had experienced stress and sadness, but I had never experienced anything that I considered like a mental health crisis or extensive amount of trouble with mental health until after I had my second baby, Beckett. And about probably 3 or 4 months after I gave birth to him, actually, my emotions and mood were just different, but I didn't necessarily notice. I also knew I was getting no sleep, and I thought that was because of the baby. And this lasted for a good 4 or 5 months, slowly but surely getting a little worse and worse and causing some more problems with family and friends. It was very difficult. It was very hard. I feel like it's a miracle that my mental health is where it is today. I feel so sane. Not everyone would probably agree with that, but
No, she is so sane. She's
100%.
amazing.
I feel super sane. And so going through all of that, it was sad and scary and shame-filled completely. I had so much shame around it, so much grief. I mean, so many emotions going through that experience. But I came out on the other side, and I feel like it's a miracle, and I'm grateful to God for honestly going through it, because my EQ, or my emotional intelligence, was probably not very high either. And going through that and getting therapy and becoming more self-aware and growing even more in my faith. I mean, I just see so many gifts that I was given in that time. And I kind of think, I don't, if anyone's watched The Chosen or read the Bible or had seen other stories around Jesus, the woman who had demons and then Jesus healed her, seeing The Chosen's depiction of that, I feel that in my soul 100%, how she was one way and then she encountered Jesus and was another. I feel that in my soul because I went through so much trauma, and it really was trauma for me. That was a really traumatic time, but I feel like the Lord was with me in it, and now I'm another way, and I'm a better person and closer to Him having gone through that.
Thank you for sharing that. You know, I don't think that you've spoken about that at all to many people. And so your story can help so many people, though. Your story helped me. And when I was going through my mental health crisis, I realized I was, not myself and that things were off. And I realized I was having a lot of similar experiences that you were when you were going through your bout of mental health challenges. And that was the scariest thing, because I could tell something was off with me, but I didn't know what to do about it, or didn't know like how severe it was, until I was also not myself, also related to trauma. So, we've both been through our own kind of traumatic events, but what I learned on my last podcast episode with Rebecca McCartney is that trauma is defined as anything that you're not expecting and that you're not prepared to emotionally handle. So it can be a big thing or a small thing, or it could be many things that add together, or it could even be just how you or people handled that experience. Trauma has lots of levels. So, but we both had very negative reactions to the trauma that we were dealing with, which again, we had never really grew up with any. I don't think we had any issues whatsoever behaviorally growing up, with, like, we were just rambunctious and energetic.
Probably undiagnosed little ADHD.
Well, I definitely know I have ADHD or ADD, and I've had to self-cope, but that doesn't, at some point I should probably get that addressed too.
Knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power, and it really does, give you hope and solutions, especially if you're not sure what's going on. It is beneficial to get outside help. So thankfully both Jennifer and I have gotten past the other side of these mental health episodes and have not had them since.
Yeah, I'm clean and sober of mental illness for 7 years.
I'm a few years in. So but so there is hope if you have gone through a scary time, or you're right in the middle of one right now. There is hope. There are solutions. You don't have to live like that or stay in that place mentally.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that, because I think for me, if I had to give someone advice on, if you are experiencing this, or if a loved one is, it's not permanent. Just like feelings come and go, mental illness bouts can come and go, and it's not permanent. And I think that was scary, thinking, well, will I ever feel the same again, or will I ever be normal, quote unquote, again? So I think that's a big thing I would give to people. And then it's great to seek out health and wellness. Health. I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's good to seek out. It's good to seek out help, whether it is medication. I'm a fan of medication. I'm not on any medication. Lord willing, I haven't had to use it. But if I ever am back in a place where I am not stable, I'm supportive of it, because that's another tool that the Lord gives us, along with therapy, along with eating well and exercise. So not being afraid of that, knowing it's not permanent, and then knowing that you're not alone too. I think people feel so much shame around going through whatever it is that they might go through, and it is healthy to talk about it.
Absolutely. I think without talking about it, neither one of us would have gotten through it, because even, with medical support and medication, you do need that support system too, outside of, the health part of it. Like, you need the emotional support, and to know that you are not in it alone, because it really does feel very lonely when you're dealing with mental health problems, because it feels like no one else is facing exactly what you're facing, which they might not be right then, but you're not alone in the world. Being aware also can help shorten the amount of time you're going through it, because if you realize, hey, I'm not my normal self, I've gone through this before, you're able to make those changes quicker, to get help faster, to find solutions. So, I'm so glad that we were able to talk about this. If there was one thing that you could say was a fortunate event from that experience, what would you say? Could you find the light and, one positive that came out of that terrible time?
Yeah. Thinking about that makes me feel a little weepy.
Let it out.
I would say a couple of things. I think number one, I think I'm so much more myself than I ever have been, because I was someone who would probably like escape feelings, So escaping reality seemed to be a great place to go. lie away to really wrestle with reality and truth and just facing hard things. I didn't cope healthfully. I would binge eat or drink too much or chase, validation, whatever it was. I was not as emotionally healthy as I am today. So I'm grateful for going through that because I had to go through really hard therapy and go and really process a lot. That would be one thing. And then I know I talk about faith a lot the whole 2 times I've been on here. But
Well, it's because it's who you are.
it is who I am, and I am grateful for my faith, and it's stronger now than it ever has been. And I know it's because I was weaker than I'd ever been, and I had to rely on the Lord to help bring me out of that pit and, set my feet on a rock. So I needed him, and I clung to him, and he got me through it, and it really felt like a miracle.
Well, I'm so glad that, you have fully recovered past that time in your life. And, I look up to you so much, for one, because you're 11 minutes older than me, but also because
Respect.
because you have just, you've gone through it. So have I, but, to see you and how well you've come out on the other side. I'm also on the other side, but I'm still newer to my, I don't know, recovery or new life or whatever you want to say. My next phase of mental health,
Mental wellness.
mental wellness. And I do need to, do some of the things that you've done that have absolutely helped, like implementing a better workout routine. I know that helps with mental health, and I obviously need it for health and mental reasons.
It really does. I was talking about that with someone today, how I can feel my emotions feel more stable when I've exercised.
Yeah.
I can feel crankier and more angry or whatever, stressed, and then I work out and those endorphins.
Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer, for joining me today, and for being so vulnerable and sharing, a very personal part of your story. I do think that, you'll be able to inspire and help others sharing your story and sharing your fortunate events. I think that you might just bless somebody else.
I sure hope so. And remember, feelings are fleeting. That's always important. Feelings aren't facts. Okay, everyone? Remember that out there. Some good counseling advice.
Yes, feelings aren't facts. I've been in my feelings this week about Branson growing up in his next phase of life. And so it's been helpful to hear that advice too.
Yes.
You'll have to stay tuned. We have a full lineup for the next 4 months of really exciting podcast guests. So I don't have our next guest to share today, but the lineup is super exciting. We'll be working on getting some potential sponsors for this podcast series. So please stick along and stay tuned. We'll have lots more stories to share. Until
See
next
you later.
time.
Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.